What's going on, people? Ring Roadmap here. Welcome to the Ring Roadmap. Today we're going to do a post-fight analysis on Navarrete versus Gonzalez. First of all, man, I did not expect this fight to be this fucking good, okay? I did not expect it to be that intense, that exciting. In fact, I didn't even expect it to be that close to begin with. But when I saw Gonzalez in the early rounds, I knew it was going to be a fight. As early as the first round, I already knew that Gonzalez was there to fight. I just didn't think that he would last that long, and I didn't think that he can keep up that pace. But because of his style, man, his style is really stamina-based, so I really believe that he had the conditioning to do it, but I was just skeptical about, how he would do it against Navarrete. We've seen his conditioning in his other fights, we've seen his stamina in his other fights, but facing a guy like Navarrete completely changes the approach to fighting, so it was a big surprise for me. Nonetheless, I still think Navarrete won, so let's take a look at some of their game plans, some of their strategies that they employed, and how exactly the fight went down. So let's start with Navarrete. First of all, the thing about Navarrete that, really made him good in this fight was the uppercuts. The uppercuts really helped him. Why? Because the high guard of Gonzalez was blocking all of the shots to the side, right? He was blocking the body shots, he was blocking the shots to the head, to the side of the head. But the ones that are coming from the center, it's kind of tricky. He wasn't able to block the uppercuts of Navarrete, and he was confused a lot of times because Navarrete will start with a hook down low and then an uppercut up top, and he would double up on the same side as well. So that's a great strategy for Navarrete. For Gonzalez, or another one that Navarrete used was, his classic stance shifting, where he switches stance in order to stay away from his opponent. You guys can look up my film study on Navarrete to further understand this, but basically what he does is he constantly switches from orthodox to southpaw in the middle of his offense and in the middle of his defense, okay? So after he throws a punch, or while he's throwing a punch, he's able to shift. When he's defending punches, he's also able to shift. So this constant change in his stance really confused Gonzalez for a while, because guys, switching from a southpaw to an orthodox changes a lot of things. It changes how close you are to your opponent. It changes, the openings that you may have whenever you switch your stance. So that really confused Gonzalez for a while. And for the entirety of the fight, pretty much. The last one was bending at the waist, okay, which we don't really see a lot from Navarrete, I gotta be honest with you. So when I started seeing that he was bending at the waist, he was bending low at the waist, I knew that, he was getting overwhelmed. I already knew that either he was getting overwhelmed or he was getting hurt with a body shot that was coming from all angles. It was coming to the liver, to the lower back. Gonzalez was also punching to the middle, to the solar plexus. So I knew that turning on one side is really a sign that number one, you're getting overwhelmed, or number two, you are hurt by those body shots. So it's one of those two. Either way, Navarrete did a pretty good job of bending at the waist and staying close to Gonzalez so that he won't be able to capitalize, or he won't be able to see or to notice Navarrete getting hurt, and he won't be able to shoot or to have the space required in order to throw his punches. That's one thing that I would have liked Gonzalez to do, or that's one thing that I would have liked to see Gonzalez do. I would have liked him to stay a little bit far from Navarrete, not allow him to smother him too much. And then when he's bending at the waist, he could have timed him with like an uppercut or a hook, or a right uppercut, a left uppercut. He could have timed him with one of those punches. So that's one thing that he didn't do. Why is that? Because he had no space. He allowed Navarrete to tie him up. He allowed Navarrete to stay close to him. And so because of that, he wasn't able to capitalize him bending at the waist. Bending at the waist is one of the most vulnerable situations that a fighter can be in, because his vision, or their vision, is really affected. And that's one thing that Gonzalez could have taken advantage of, but he didn't. Okay, he stayed close. He didn't give himself the space in order to place those punches well, and because of that, he wasn't able to maximize the opportunities that was being presented by Navarrete. Because I really believe that Navarrete was getting overwhelmed. I really thought that. It was his first time facing somebody who had the same fighting spirit as him, who had the constant pressure. Like, there are some guys like Gio Santissima who were good in spurts, but this was the first time where it was Gonzalez, and it was a guy that constantly came forward, constantly threw punches, and he never stopped. So this was the first time that Navarrete really faced someone at that caliber, someone who doesn't just throw in spurts, but someone who throws constantly, someone who throws continuously. And he was overwhelmed for a while. I saw it in his body language, I saw it in his face, I saw it in the way he was moving. The question of whether or not he was hurt, he definitely was hurt, because he admitted it, right? You guys heard it in the post-fight interview. He said that he was hurt, so it's best to believe that as well. I really thought that he was hurt, but it's hard to see. Why? Because he moves like a fucking worm, man. If you look at Navarrete, he moves like a worm. He's very loose, right? He's very soft with his movement. He moves like a worm. All his punches are kind of sloppy, but it has power behind it. You can hear it. It goes like boom, boom. It hurts. It's heavy, but it looks loose. It looks like it's not even trying to load up, or it doesn't even look like he's trying to put force behind it, but it works, man. It's effective for him. So yeah, Navarrete is just one of the most awkward fighters today, and because of that, a lot of guys just fail. A lot of guys just come up short. But I have to say Gonzalez did a pretty good job, although in the totality of all the rounds, he didn't really win all that much. I have to rewatch it. I gave him like 4 rounds, okay? So one commentator said 3 rounds, I gave him 4 rounds, but I have to recall it. All right, let's look at the bad strategies of both. Number 1, for Navarrete, one of his bad strategies, he bent at the waist. And this is contradictory to what I said a while ago, where I said that bending at the waist worked for him. But there are a lot of other ways to defend yourself other than bending at the waist, especially for Navarrete. Navarrete has long arms, so he could have just blocked all of those shots, in my opinion, instead of bending at the waist. Because when he decided to bend at the waist, he couldn't really counter off of that. He couldn't really respond well to the punches. He couldn't really come back in position right away. So he kind of got stuck in there, and then he waited for the referee to break it up, which is a good thing, but he wasn't able to make Gonzalez pay, and that's why Gonzalez never had the respect. Because Navarrete put himself in positions where he cannot counter efficiently, which I also tackled in another video. You can look it up on my channel. I think it's called Placement and Positioning, so you can look it up. The bad strategy for Gonzalez, however, is staying too close, right? Or smothering himself after he threw his punches. So after he threw the right hand, for example, you'd see him get extremely close with Navarrete, and because of this, he's not able to follow up. This is what I would have liked to see. You see him tie up with Navarrete after he throws the right hand, and he tries to sneak in those inside shots, but guess what? He has no space. Number 1, Navarrete's head is hiding behind his shoulder, and then number 2, Navarrete's bending extremely down at the waist, so his body's kind of protected as well. So he wasn't able to maximize that because Navarrete wasn't giving him all the space in the world. So smothering himself only made it more difficult to follow up on his shots. Yes, he was able to catch Navarrete with the right hand, but what came after that? What came after the right hand? Nothing. There was no left uppercut, there was no left hook. And so although Gonzalez landed some shots that we never expected him to land, he wasn't able to follow up because he was smothering himself. He was tying up after he threw his power shots, and just like Navarrete, he also switches to a southpaw stance after he throws his right hand. So that's one strategy that I would have liked him not to do, or that's one strategy that I did not like that I didn't like from Gonzalez, I should say. Now let's look at Navarrete's weaknesses. Navarrete's biggest weakness is backing up. You know, we saw how bad he is at backing up. We saw how bad he is at fighting while backing up. And so because of this, I would assume that facing pressure fighters will make it difficult for him soon, but facing boxers is like easy, man. We've seen him bully boxers all day. We've seen him bully boxer punchers all day, but pressure fighters, high volume punchers, he's gonna eventually find his match, and I'm not sure who that is at the moment, but I still believe that nobody beats Navarrete at 126, maybe at 130, but at 126 is like the ultimate bully. So there's really nobody that I can see in 126 that can beat him stylistically. Okay, he can beat a lot of boxers, he can beat a lot of power punchers, but tonight he was able to face someone who had no respect for him, someone who had the stamina to keep up with him, someone who had the pressure to move forward, someone who has the chin to take his punches, someone who has the body resilience in order to take his body shots. And that's really the style that will eventually give Navarrete problems in the past. Are we gonna find another Gonzalez in this division? That's the question. Because right now I don't think anybody can come close to Gonzalez in terms of pure pressure and pure conditioning. His conditioning was insane, so that's an amazing fighter right there. In the rematch, I still think Navarrete wins, but it's gonna be a war. It's gonna be a war, man. So hopefully he can give Gonzalez a rematch. Was Navarrete exposed? I don't think so. This is just a new style for him. This is just a style that he's not used to facing. But when he goes back to facing those boxers, which fortunately for his division, a lot of the fighters in his division, a lot of the top contenders in his division are boxer punchers. So he's not going to face a lot of guys like Gonzalez who has that constant pressure. So I don't think he was exposed tonight. I think his weaknesses was evident, but I don't think he was exposed. He was still able to dominate the fight, and he was still able to control the pace. Can anybody at 126 beat him? Absolutely not, in my opinion. I don't think anybody at 126 can beat him. He needs to move up to 130 in order to find the real challenges, in order to find someone who can actually match his volume and his work rate. But at 126, no, I don't think so. You guys can look back at this video soon when he fights another 126 guy, but you know, I'm assuming that Navarrete will move up to 130 after this one. That's what I think. Because he's been bullying guys at 122 and 126 for years. I think it's time for him to move up to 130. Anyway, that was a great performance by Navarrete. I'll see you guys soon, man. Subscribe to the channel. More film studies coming soon. And that's it. Peace out.